So once you know and are doing the foundational practices in the self-mastery work, those are the ones found in the self-mastery course 1, for example, you have this invaluable foundation to take apart beliefs from. But at a certain point, you might hit a plateau where you find yourself not getting further or walking in circles or not getting maybe to certain dark corners of your unconscious. So you might feel stuck in your head and feel that you know all the ingredients for transformation, but maybe not able to embody them fully and truly live from them. So there might also be situations where you feel that you are getting better, way better in certain areas, that there are improvements and that old patterns are coming apart and are not there anymore. And with that initial motivation to make change and keep practicing might be fading. And when you stop practicing, well, some old patterns might be creeping back in again. So at this point, if you want to keep moving, going further and move out of the hunter identity and more into the dreamer and artist, well, then you need some new skills at this point. So in this episode, we'll explore what those skills might be and when you know that you're ready for them. When you start practicing the self-mastery work, you're stepping into the hunter role. And I covered this in episode 1 of the podcast. So the different roles. If you haven't listened to that, that's a good one to go back to. But this is a necessary shift out from the old victim role, where you were pulled along with your internal reactions, which are stemming from your unconscious beliefs. So with moving out of the victim and into the hunter, now you're turning the tables and you're observing and learning about your belief system so you can shift the parts that you don't want. And when you're in this stage, when you're at this stage of learning the hunter skills, you're often getting a lot better at seeing what kind of thoughts, emotions, and reactions that you have a habit of stepping into. And understanding that larger structure around your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. You understand the system and how they were created, how they interact with each other. And you're probably getting a lot better at being skeptical about your thoughts, stories, and the opinions that your mind has. And you'll practicing mapping your perspectives and emotions and relate them, connect them with an unconscious part of yourself, what we call characters in this work. And you might even get a lot better at accepting or even feel compassion for your reactions, since you understand how they were formed and you now are feeling more separate from them because you're observing them. So there might even be some compassion that are coming up around them. But if you're only taking this hunter approach to this work and you don't practice any dreamer skills, there's a big chance that you might find yourself struggling in certain areas. And they might be getting in touch with emotions and learn how to release them through your body. It might be having difficulties feeling grounded in your body and embody this new identity, feeling it in your body rather than thinking about it, rather than thinking you know it, that you got it. And you might also find yourself struggling with being, that you have gotten really good at taking apart and being skeptical, but you're having difficulties knowing what you want and create that new dream. So you're good at taking apart the old house, but not to build a new one. And you might be feeling stuck in your head and you're thinking with little experiences of other parts of your being. like feeling, like sensing, like your heart, consciousness, things outside of your mind. And you might not yet experience that full potential of self-love and the transformation that self-love will have on your unconscious structure. So now, the hunter skills that you've been practicing, I keep saying it, they are invaluable to help you observe and stay skeptical of the stories that you used to be pulled into and identify with. So this is not an encouragement to throw them out. Not at all. This is much more an invitation to add other kinds of skills and focus once it's time. So if you're practiced at self-mastery, after a while, you also become more intuitive about when to use what skill, when to apply what skill. For example, when is it time to just kind of shift an emotion that you find yourself going into? And when is it time to go being with it, to let it release something that's been stored for a long time? And when do you, for example, go use that dreaming and artist skill of working with intent, of intending something, but also use it to reveal and see unconscious parts that are resisting what it is that you think that you want? So those are some examples where the more of these skills that you have, you'll also get better at knowing when to apply which one of them. And this might be confusing in the beginning, and that's just it's just natural. That's just what it is. When you have this wider range of skills, you have up-leveled your game. You have a chance to up-level your game. So if you're listening to this and you are just getting started with the self-mastery practice, or you're in the middle of learning them, keep doing that. That's exactly where you need to build your foundation. But if you're listening to this and you have some really good hunting skills already, and you're applying them to step outside of your stories, to observe them, and to find and even shift the hidden beliefs underneath, well, I want to go through 3 signs, 3 clues that you can keep an eye open for when you know that it's time to add some more dreaming skills to your practices. So sign number 1, you might find yourself overanalyzing and feel stuck in your head. So the self-mastery work has a quite analytical approach to personal transformation. It starts out that way, at least. And the mind often likes that because that provides a map. It provides an understanding of how your inner world works, how your mind works, how these beliefs have been structured over time. And it gives you an understanding on how to make changes. And the mind often feels intrigued by this work, and it wants to help, and it wants to figure things out. So it kind of wants to be on board. But after a while, if you find yourself having a lot of thoughts about what is going on in a certain reaction, if you find your mind going back and forth between different options and trying to figure out the right answer, is this what's going on, or is it coming from this belief or that thing, and was it this word that activated it? And you kind of find your mind just running and trying to figure it out. That's just the mind doing what it's doing. It's doing what its function is. The question is how much attention you give it, and if you put faith in your thinking mind to figure out your unconscious mind. Let me say that again. How much faith are you putting into your thinking mind to figure out your unconscious mind? Because that is a dead end. Initial understanding of this process is good for the mind to be on board and be motivated, but this is just a first step that you need to replace with connecting with your emotions, with your body, your heart, your self-love with consciousness, pleasure, and wanting, to mention a few of all the wondrous gifts that you've been given in your human experience. So the mind is one of those wondrous gifts, and it's made to tell stories and give meaning. And if you keep putting your attention in your mind and keep identifying with it and put faith in the meaning that the mind is giving, it will be encouraged to keep doing that. So that's a summary of the first sign. Overanalyzing and find yourself being stuck in the head and not able to drop into your body. So sign number 2, clue number 2 to keep an eye open for is a dislike for your unconscious parts, even the smallest hint of it. So this is where we all start out. We want to change our old patterns that have been bothering us for years. And we've finally kind of taken that responsibility and stepped up and saying, I want to change this. But we're approaching it with that, I want it to go away. How can I fix it? And that experienced suffering that we have from these patterns is often then what gets us motivated. It's painful. It's hurting. It's messing up our relationships and what we want for ourselves in our life. So that's also what gets us motivated to change it. But that initial approach of wanting it to go away, that will take you to the first level of the game. After a while, with some guidance, you might see that the one doing the disliking is also a part of the same mind. Which means that at this point, you're still identified with your mind and you haven't stepped out into the true observer of your mind. So you're still playing the mind's game by approaching your unconscious parts with a go away attitude. I want you out of here. To the mind, it might seem very surprising and challenging that self-love includes loving all parts of you. Also the dark, filthy, non-appropriate, materialistic, mean, non-spiritual ones. It includes all of it. And that doesn't seem okay to the thinking mind often. But to you, at your core, underneath the layers of the mind, it's the most natural thing in the world to love also these parts of you. And when you start practicing loving these parts, all your parts, you're naturally aligning more with your core self. And you will feel that inside of you. And with that, you're no longer playing the same game of the mind. So number 2, the dislike for your unconscious parts, the wanting them to go away, to be fixed. That's another clue. And number 3, it might be a feeling of confusion or not knowing what you want or how to trust the wantings that you do have. So after learning that these opinions that you might have based most of your life decisions on, they were derived from your unconscious beliefs that are often based in fear. And when you learn that, you often end up wondering, then who the hell am I underneath all these characters? And how can I tell if it's a character of the mind speaking or if it's me from integrity? So when I have a wanting, when I have a desire, how do I know who's talking? So This stage often leaves us feeling a bit confused and lost, but it's actually the perfect springboard into the next level of self-awareness, because a state of confusion can be such a powerful invitation depending on what we make out of it. Questions and confusion does not mean failure. It doesn't mean that we haven't figured it out and therefore we are not there yet. But our mind often paints that story, that picture. But it simply means that we're invited to get that clarity, that we're longing for clarity. So when I started to explore this specific question, how do I know what I want? And how do I know if I can trust what I feel I want? I found something that surprised my ego mind, that what I wanted was a force in me. A force that is the one thing that I can navigate life from without the influence of my mind characters. They can, of course, hook on and hold on to these integrity wantings as well. And it can be a bit of both. But that force in itself, it's from integrity. And this force is often repressed by the ego mind. We're not in touch with it because it hasn't been okay, according to the ego mind, to be connected with it. And it might have been seen as selfish or unsafe or dangerous in some way. So often repressed it. What you want is not something that you figure out through your head, but that you learn to feel in your body. And that starts with putting your attention there in your body and set the intent to connect with what you want. And your body will start speaking to you. You will also, in this process, get a good look at the beliefs that have been trying to protect you by repressing this force, so you can help them shift. So as you set this intent, as you start connecting with the body, you'll also get a good insight of what is in your mind that is in the way of connecting with this. 2 in 1. So that's the third sign to look out for. A feeling of not knowing what you want or how to trust the wantings that you do have. So with that, to have a little deeper conversation around what these practices might be that we're experiencing and how that shift might look like when we choose to up-level our game, I now would like to invite 2 guests. They're 2 brave and amazing women. They have recently taken the journey for up-leveling from hunter skills to moving more into their bodies, connecting with what they want, and self-love. And they were both participants in the last round of Being Me, which is an online mastermind for women at this point that guides you into connecting with what you truly want and let go of struggle, effort, and control. So welcome, Geraldine Jansardi and Jody Shore. And I'll make sure that I get you both here on my screen. There we go. So first of all, welcome and thank you so much for coming on here and sharing about your journeys. I know that it helps others to hear about different people's experiences and not just mine or someone else's. So let's see, let's get you unmuted also, Geraldine, there. Excellent. Thank you. So first of all, just to get this started, how do you feel about being here? Let's start there. Jody, how do you feel about being here? Do you want to make any confessions? Sometimes in this work, we call confessions a way of saying out loud some of the fears and nervousness that might be going on. And with that, when we say it out loud, it kind of loses its grip on us because we don't have to hide it under some other layers. So, Jody, how are you feeling?
True confessions. I have a tremendous amount of adrenaline running through my entire body, despite my brain saying this is not a big deal. But I'm excited, I'm excited to be here and certainly hope that some of what I can share will be of value. To one of you is enough, but hopefully to more.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for the confession. And Geraldine, how about you?
Yes, I'm having a very similar response. I was thinking all morning, oh, I hope I say the right thing, but I thought about it, kind of tried to center myself before the call and just recognize that, like Jody says, if one person can appreciate something from my experience, that's enough, and just to speak from integrity. So I'm excited to share what I've experienced if it's helpful.
Beautiful. And recognizing that all these things can be going on at the same time, huh? Our mind can have a conscious thought about, okay, we understand this or want it to go a certain way. And at the same time, our heart is racing or our nervous system is responding in another way. So that's all normal. So I'd ask you to give us like a brief background on when you started the self-mastery work. Maybe how you were feeling back then, and what was going on in your life, and what was it that you wanted to change. Geraldine, do you feel like starting?
Sure, of course. So I started in around May of 2020. I had already started kind of a process and trying to get to the bottom of my anxiety, but I had kind of plateaued and didn't really know where to go from there. And my sister had done Gary's work for quite some time, so she really encouraged me to try it out. And I'm so glad she did, because I was in a high state of anxiety, feelings of unworthiness, guilt, shame, completely controlled by the mind. So, of course, as everyone knows here, he gave me all the tools I needed to kind of unlayer all of that. So I was not in a great place when I started, but of course, that completely transformed at the end of it.
And how long ago is this? When did you start doing the self-mastery work?
May 2020. So just around the time the pandemic started. So, which was nice because I was able to devote so much of my attention to it because there was nothing else going on. So,
Beautiful. Thank you. And Jody, how about you? A little background. Where did you start out?
Sure. So I did the Self-Mastery 1 course 3 years ago. It's interesting when I look back, it's like, it was kind of, we didn't have this community. So I had Googled something. A lot of us have that experience. We find Pathway to Happiness, find the Self-Mastery course. And I just did the lone wolf thing, worked through the practices. I'm kind of one of those overachievers, so spent a tremendous amount of time trying to master everything. And as Geraldine said, I was able to begin to unpeel the layers. And at that point in my life, I think the circumstances were pretty darn good. I mean, I was at a point in my life where I kind of had everything, like family, and I had enough of stuff. I was living in the Middle East, living this really cool life. Just an amazing life. And yet I would find myself experiencing like emotional reactions that I couldn't explain. My brain would go, wait a minute, why are you so fucking angry? Why is this like boom coming out at your little daughter? Like, what is that? And so I just had a lot of anger and a lot of emotion inside of me. So the work, of course, helped me to begin to be able to peel back the layers and understand and have me separate from all those beliefs that were underneath.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And you also revisited the course, doing it in the academy setting
I did.
now in 2020, huh?
I did, because I'm constantly revisiting the practices, just because I feel like the more I put my attention there and work on things, the better I am at the skill. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was really interesting to do the self-mastery course again in the academy. I'm like, these people are so lucky. I can't believe they have this community of support. It was like, but I was good with doing it on my own. I could hide. Nobody
Mhm.
knew. I was doing my own thing.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I started 3 years ago.
Yeah. And where would you say that you were at after you'd done the self-mastery course? Like, what were the new skills that you've gained? What were changes that you could see? What had improved? And what were you still struggling with at that point?
Do you
Geraldine.
want
Yeah. So I definitely felt lighter in general. It just like everything all made sense. Like, okay, now I understand where this character is coming from. Okay, let's work on that. My anxiety was reduced. I just felt in control. Um, but at the same time, like you touched on, Ava, I was still uncertain. Like, well, if that's not me and that's not me, then who the heck am I and how do I know? Because I've always dealt with a lot of like, self-confidence issues and uncertainty about how I'm living my life. So then it kind of led into that character and created a whole another story. But around that time, Your Being Me program popped up. So it kind of, like you said, was a perfect launching point from where I was to kind of process that uncertainty and figure out where to go from there. Because self mastery is wonderful and priceless, but it's just the start. So it was what led me into the next thing, which is what I really needed.
Mhm. Hmm. And Jody, what would you say? Where were you at after self-mastery?
I think after self-mastery, I just kept feeling like, okay, I understand where all this is coming from, but I would still get triggered. I'm like, okay, now
Mhm.
I'm aware, and I would essentially just, my judge just got more mad. It's like my brain just kept me in the loop, because I would react, and I would the good news is I was not stuck in that downward spiral for a long period of time, but
Hmm.
I couldn't, like, in the moment, I wanted to slow things down and be able to catch it before I
Mm.
reacted. I was just so frustrated because I was working so hard at mastering these skills, and I was up here going, and I knew there had to be something else,
Hmm.
because my life had gotten much better, absolutely, like Geraldine said, but it wasn't enough.
Hmm.
And then when you talked about the three things, the other thing, so it was not wanting to not react,
Hmm.
but the other piece was that thing of desire, and like, wait a minute, so I have all this, what do I really want? What's going to make me happy, truly happy? So that was the other thing I was left with, like, okay, I'm not triggered as much and I
Mhm.
recover quicker, but there's got to be something else. There's more.
Mhm. A feeling
Yeah.
more than a knowing, like, there's more to be experienced.
Yes.
Hmm. And let me also ask you, did any of you do Self-Mastery 2 course? Did you go through that one as well? Jody did. Yeah.
Oh, I did them all.
Did them all. Relationship.
All the relationship course, and I studied them all. I read all the books. I mean, I've been at this a long time, but honestly, I kept coming back to the same place.
How would you describe that same place?
I hadn't figured it out to the point where something had broken through, even though I was happier.
Mm.
I mean, this pathway, I was on this pathway to being happier, but it was like, I just kept coming back to the same stuck point.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. So let's Let's jump into that. What shifts then did you experience with the practices that we did in Being Me? So what were the practices that had a big impact on you in there? Jody, do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. This was really great to get to go back and kind of think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, two primary shifts were in my mind. I went from going from only in my head to actually embodying and using my body to get in touch with my emotions and the physical sensations. So I wasn't just up here, I integrated. I was able to integrate more than just my brain, because this has helped me so much in my life, but it was the place there where I said I was stuck. It was right here.
In your mind, in your head.
In my mind. Mm. And the other thing was I shifted my attention from to-do lists, because I'm really good at them and I can knock out a lot of stuff and do it well. But I was able to shift from the to-do list to actually pleasure, enjoying my life. Yes, I still do the to-do list, but they weren't running me. Now it's pleasure. I feel pleasure in my everyday to-do lists and my gigantic to-do lists, the ones that I love conquering. My hero just loves it. So those are the two biggies for me.
And what would you say that helped you shift into that? What was it that you needed? What kind of support, what practices made it possible for you to make that shift?
That's what I love, is that when I see myself having the courage, because I didn't know if I wanted to, I mean, I've done every course, yes, but what my mind was saying was, really another one, as if this one's going to be the one that makes the difference. And honestly, it was, and I can remember reaching out and saying, what do you think? Do you think this is the one I should do? And in the end, I had to come back and answer it for myself. So I decided to take the risk. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting about the practices is they were unexpected. They were uncomfortable, but it's like, I believe if you hire a coach, you take the coaching. So I was all in. And there were really, I thought about many of the practices, but I just wanted to share there were some practices around connecting with pleasure. And to me, I'm just like, what the hell are you talking about? Pleasure. I just didn't get it. But the practices helped me to understand what that meant. The second thing was really practices that had me learn to trust life. It's like just that knowing, getting in touch with and trusting that I can trust myself. That was the second one. These practices that I was like, really? We're doing that? And then the third thing, and this is the biggie. Yes, I have Googled unconditional self-love. How do I get it? How do I go there? And the practices that we embarked on, I have now experienced it. I didn't understand Jesus loves you. I'm like, what? He doesn't even know me. Or you got to love yourself first. I got it up here and I did not get it until some of the practices that we took on. I had to trust in the process and go there. And then the neural pathways, I know Eva talks about neural pathways, but I truly believe if you just, you just give it a go, and then all of a sudden, and you're connected in your body, not just up here, but you feel it. It's like, so those three areas of practice are, to me, what caused those shifts.
Yeah. And it sounds like it wasn't things that your mind would have figured out or come up with. It was kind of going counterintuitive what your mind was saying. It was uncomfortable with it, but you immerse yourself in it and said, okay, I'll try the doing of them. And with
Yes.
that, the shift happened. How did the shift happen? How did you feel it? How did you realize like, oh, I think I have had a shift? How did it feel different in you?
Oh, just so much more joy and freedom. Like I found myself, instead of questioning the practices, getting into it. And letting go of control. Like I wasn't trying to control, okay, let me figure this out. And how can I do this? I tried to pay attention to how it felt in my body so I could recreate it. Or go beyond that. But it was like, oh, okay. So got away from my mind, did what the coach said to do, and then noticed how that felt, and then repeat. And from doing that a number of times, and just it really opened something up I never would have expected. So yay. No longer just in the head.
That what you longed for happened, opened up.
Yes.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is what I sometimes describe, and it's so good how you're describing it right now, because that's what I refer to when I say a direct experience, like the direct experience of self-love, the direct experience of pleasure, of joy, of consciousness, whatever it is that you're kind of intending or going for. But it's very different from thinking about it. But when you're used to being in your mind and thinking, it's very hard to tell the difference because you've very seldom had that direct experience. But it is very different learning about something and experiencing, sensing it in your body. And it sounds like that's what you had the epiphany of. And Okay, Geraldine, what would you say, what shifts did you experience, and what were the practices that took you there?
Yeah. So starting out and being me, I think I was a little confused because of course we function such a space in our mind. So the idea of feeling into something was really new. So learning about what that means. So whether, you're asking yourself a question and you're contracting, or you feel expanded, or whatever it means to you, was just going through the practice of it and learning how that felt in my body. But the biggest shifts for me, I feel like there were so many, but just finding pleasure in the day to day. So whatever I'm doing might be mundane to someone else, but whatever it is, I can find some fun in it. And then learning to speak from integrity. So that force that you talked about that's within you, and learning how to access that. And when I speak from that place, it's clear, it's confident. It's like the wanting, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be sexual in nature. Whatever it is what it is. And there's no need to justify it or defend it. It's just there. And to kind of follow that. For me, the biggest shift I experienced was the self-love. So if you had told me prior to being me what I would experience, there would have been like, that's not possible. But using the practices that you shared with us at the end of the course, I was like, so this is what it's like to really love all of yourself. Because it's like you said, accepting every part and surrendering to whatever that is at that moment, and not pushing it away, because then it's always going to be something you're going to be pushing away. So that was incredible to experience that.
I remember there was one specific session that you came on, and it was like your light had been turned on. Like your eyes were just like ding, glittering and lit up. Do you remember what happened there for you? Do you remember
Mhm.
if it was a specific shift
Yeah.
that happened?
It was something you said specifically, that I say to myself every day, is that the one that is rejecting you is not you. And for whatever reason, that just resonates with me every single day. And it's just the mind talking to the mind. I'm just observing that. That's not me. I'm here and I'm loved, and that's all that matters. So that was the biggest shift for me. And in terms of the practices, the daily journaling, I think, is so powerful because it helps you identify what you want. It gets it on paper, and you can highlight the fears that you might be having around that, whatever that thing is, to kind of break it down a little further. Taking myself on a date, that was my most favorite practice because I had never done anything like that before. So it's putting yourself first and going to get that delicious dessert that you wanted, but gave yourself a million reasons why you can't have it. And just learning to feel into the body, I think, is a huge practice to be able to equip yourself with, instead of functioning from the mind.
Yeah. Stop pushing away, stop denying those things that you feel that you do want and you do enjoy. Instead, you start giving them to yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And there's something in that that's like you both are pointing to that is hard to describe, that is hard to put into words, but something opens up energetically inside of you. There's a shift happening when you do it. It's like it follows, it's a consequence for the practices that you're doing. Something will connect you with that. Something will open up inside of you and it will start flowing from you. Would you recognize that? Is that, yeah, tell me about, so where are you now? How would you describe where you're at now? How is this state any different from when you started the self-mastery course, Geraldine?
So I feel like I'm in a place of creation instead of chasing my tail, trying to find all the right answers. I'm in a place of just being and being okay with just being. I still struggle with my good girl and integrity. They often butt heads. So still working through that process.
How will
But
that
I
look?
just
How would that
feel,
look? What was a situation where both show up and
well, it can be a variety of things. It can just be me wanting to speak from integrity and say something maybe I wouldn't typically be comfortable saying, and the grid girl says, "You can't see that right now. That's not appropriate." It's just a butting heads of a variety of things.
Yeah.
But I'm just lighter. I just feel excited. I feel excited about living and exploring and adventures and learning new things. But at the same time, being okay with the other stuff that shows up, whether that's the anger or the sadness, and just feeling with it and letting it go. And I just feel like I'm in the best place I've ever been in general. Just a place of creation and moving through life and feeling what that feels like and just going with it.
Beautiful. That's great to hear. Jody, what about you? How would you describe where you're at now compared to when you started the self-mastery course?
Honestly, I still get triggered. I'm still the same me with the same characters running around in my head. But as Geraldine said, I now have a good relationship, if you will, with all of the characters, the ones that I'm aware of, and those that I know there'll be more that I will uncover. But I'm not as afraid of that anymore. I just feel at peace with who I am, but also with all these amazing characters who I've developed over my lifetime that are there for a reason. Some have faded and some show up more often, but I really don't feel alone because I feel like not only am I connected to kind of all my parts, but I'm also feel more connected generally.
With other
To everyone.
people, with
Yes, to
yourself, with life.
everyone, and yeah, with everything. So when I have an interaction, for example, where someone else is maybe angry with me or angry about things, I'm able to be there in a way where I'm not getting triggered, and I can kind of feel the energy of them come over me. It's almost like a tsunami. It comes over me, and I kind of just stand there and I let the wave go past, and then it's done, which is amazing. And it's an amazing, I love being able to do that now, both for myself and for the person that I'm with. It's really, when I first experienced it, and now I can experience it pretty regularly. It's just like, what a gift not to get all caught up in all the crap. So that's an amazing thing. And just the joy of life. I mean, I feel like Geraldine said, I enjoy my to-do list. I enjoy my life. Yeah, there are things I don't want to do, but I find ways to make it fun. I just feel like when I think about pathway to happiness, it's like, yep, I'm on it. I'm on this pathway, and I'm excited about what's coming. And the last thing I'll say is that what's really cool is I'm starting to get to the point where I know I can generate things. When you talk about being an artist, it's like suddenly I'm like, wow, not only can I just enjoy life and kind of going through my to-do list, but suddenly I'm starting to get like, oh, where I put my attention, I can create what I want, not just materially or stuff, but my emotions and how I feel and the energy that I'm contributing. Because I think I've reached that point in my life where, for me, it's about my contribution to those around me, and to the world. And I'm in a much better place to be able to truly do that from integrity, as Geraldine says. From a place not wanting it from an ego perspective to make that difference. No, I now know with every breath I take, I can contribute, which is really just brings so much joy and peace and pleasure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I feel inclined to end this chat in a way that we would often start our Being Me sessions, with celebrations and brags, which is something that we would do weekly. So I would like to hear, and then we'll take a look in the chat and see if there are any questions for you guys or for me. But I would like to hear some celebrations and maybe even some brags in there, because that's a word that we work on taking back, and shifting in Being Me. It's also part of being the artist, of taking an old meaning that's been collectively formed or formed in society and kind of turn it into your own thing. You use your words as magic, and you can take out meaning from them and put new meaning into. So bragging and celebrating ourselves and things that is going on that we're also practicing in the community, how with our weekly wins. But here we take a little step further, and we provoke some unconscious parts and calling them brags even, which is usually, against that whole program. But I would love to hear if you have any brags or celebrations that you would like to share with us. Geraldine, you want to go first?
Yeah, so my brag and celebration is that I said yes to this because it's terrifying to me. So I'm so proud of myself for doing something that's scary.
Yay. Celebrating you for that.
Yeah.
Jody, what
That's
about you?
I want to brag that I have started this new year with some intentions that I'm super excited about. And it's just rather than goal setting, I'm a big goal setter. Like I always have been like, I've got this goal and I'm going to conquer it. And I'm so excited because I just kind of sat down at the beginning of the year and thought, well, what are my intentions? Not my goals, but how do I want to live? And I have an intention to parent from my heart, to be the best mom I can be by parenting from my heart and by honoring my partner. You know, I've got many other intentions, but I'm so proud of myself for getting clear that there's nowhere to get to, but wow, what an exciting journey. And these intentions are it's just a great way to wake up and say, rather than beating myself up for not being a perfect parent, I can instead just have the intention of parenting from my heart. So I'm so proud of myself. Woo!
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Those are very juicy brags and celebrations. I love them. Thanks for sharing them with us. Okay, let us know, anyone who's here listening live, if there are any questions that you have coming up. Otherwise, we'll also keep this conversation going. We'll post this recording in the community, and if there are questions and thoughts and insights showing up after that, they're very welcome as comments there as well. So Aitana, hi Aitana, has a question. She says, would you tell us more about what you're calling intention? And Jody, please go ahead and share a little bit, you first, about how you work with that.
Sure. I think the shift for me, I think I mentioned it as I was kind of doing my brag, is a shift from like a goal, like something I want to attain, to an intent of where I want to come from. You know, I think that's the best way I can describe, is instead of kind of, again, like I want to get there, it's more, here's where I'm going to come from. So my intent is kind of where I'm being, where I'm coming from. I don't know if that helps.
Mm-hmm. And she also jumps in and says, sorry, I actually want to hear about integrity. So do you have anything you want to say about that? Both Jody and Geraldine, and I can fill in some stuff too.
Yeah, so from integrity, for me, this may be kind of jolting, is from the pussy. So it's learning to feel into that as a source and a guide within you as a woman, and asking it questions and feeling the flow of it, for me, anyhow. I don't know, Jody, how your experience is.
And just before that, so Geraldine, the first time you heard me talk about pussy inside the being me, how did you react?
Whoa. It took me a while to warm up to the word and say it, actually say it without giggling, which still happens sometimes, because it's not something we hear every day. So,
and it has a lot of connections with it from the mind that's been,
Yes.
and also negative. And I mean, we can talk about it as the first chakra or the first energy center. And we can talk about it as desire, as wanting inside of us. But one of the reasons is, again, to take back a word that's been used in a different way. And that is also why this is a really good segue into explaining why right now this mastermind is for women, or for people who identify themselves as women, because in a way we all have, as both female and male, we have the feminine and the masculine energy in us. So doesn't have to be about the physical body. And we can all connect to the feminine inside of us and to the masculine inside of us. These are energy forces that we have. But why not making it fun? And use that word that has a lot of like heaviness to it, or been used against us or cursed with, and kind of taking it back. So it's also a practice in taking power back from where it's been invested in a way. So for you, integrity kind of became embodied with the pussy and with the energy in there and with the power, because every part of your body actually has a consciousness. Like your heart has, your lungs and your kidneys and all of it is alive, and you can connect with it. And the same way, when you're connecting with energy center number 1, with your root chakra, it comes alive because you put your attention there, and it starts speaking to you. So just to give a little bit of background on that word and how we work with it and connecting with it. Yeah. Jody, integrity for you, what would you say it is?
Yeah, I would just add that integrity for me, I have a moment I'd like to share where integrity, I kind of got it. And I remember my partner said or spoke to me in a way that was not okay with me. And rather than in my brain saying, just walk away, let it go, or in my brain, I usually called him an asshole. But instead, my integrity, my true integrity popped up like a weasel and went, no. I'll never forget it as long as I live. There was a level of it, there was no anger there. There was no blame, no shame, no nothing. It was more my true integrity said, it's not okay with me to be talked to that way. And for me, it was, it didn't come from here. It came from the work I had been doing, and it came from embodiment, I think is the word we've been using here. So anyway, that's for me, integrity.
Yeah, that's a really good way of explaining or giving it an image of what it can look like when it's not layered underneath all these other conditioning, the programming saying we shouldn't say that, that's not okay, just be kind, just be grateful, all these other things. But it's like, no, this is actually what I'm feeling. I'm feeling a big no in my body. It's not okay to be spoken to this way. He can still do it. I can't control someone else, but I feel in me what's okay with me. What's my boundary? Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And the alchemy, by the way, in the relationship has been great. It's everything. I mean, I'm not talked to that way anymore. And I didn't have to lecture him.
So what happened? It came out from you, from integrity, the no.
Right.
Yeah.
And now there's been a really big shift, and nothing that I had to work on and shame or point fingers at. It's more where I'm it's the other word, the other I word, the intent. I have the intent to honor my partner and myself.
Yeah.
And it's just different.
Yeah. Because this is something that often one would think magically, but it's kind of a logical consequence that working with our boundaries that we talked about in the last session shifts a lot also when we turn to ourselves and give ourselves this unconditional self-love. Because when we take care of ourselves, we also take care of our no, and we take care of our yes. We take care of both in giving ourselves what it is that we truly desire and what we want. And also we become our best guardian and partner and date and guardian angel that says, no, I don't want this. And even though we before might know these things, we have the layers that says in the mind that says, nah, it's not okay. I should be feeling this instead, or why am I having this reaction? But now it's coming out more clear. It's allowed to be there. It's not as many layers on top. So we have another question from Ed saying, can you share more about activating the artist or a dreamer, the dreamer? Any of you want to share about how you experienced that shift? Because you both spoke to it like, oh, now I feel like I am the one influencing my life, the world around me.
Sure. I'll give an example from this morning. I got in my car to drive to pick up my daughter. And, you know, a drive can be frustration because you missed a red light or a driver pulls in front of you, this kind of thing. And I was thinking this morning about, wow, I love my car. And I just really got into driving my car. And I said, wait a minute, I want some music. And I asked Siri to play me some uplifting, soulful music. And I'm having a blast, right? I'm just like really enjoying my morning calmly. And then this car pulls in front of me, like clearly with a lot of negative, and I let them go. It didn't bother me. It did not impact me. I sent them some love and good energy and kept driving. And to me, it was a perfect example for myself of how I could remember taking the same route to pick my daughter up and being in a very different place. But I created that. It was my artist that created that experience of driving to go get her. And guess what kind of place I was in when she got in the car? It's that intention of parenting from my heart. So it's just one example of how the dreamer is I'm now tapped into dreaming the experience of this life that I want to have, even when I'm just going to pick up my daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, it's similar for me as well. So it's deciding what kind of world I want around me and what I want to experience throughout the day and making that happen, whether that's dancing in my living room or, you know, thinking of activities I've always wanted to do, but maybe I've been afraid to do because of, you know, underlying fears that are just made up in my head. And I just decide to do them because I recognize that this is what I want and this is what I want to experience and create. So it's just basically having an open book and writing whatever you want in it.
I know you've been trying out some new things for yourself lately.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you previously were afraid of doing and now that you are trying out?
I'm a very cautious person, so I don't like going fast. I like being kind of very protective before all this. Now I'm renting electric scooters and scooting all over the city, going very fast, carefully, of course. But that's something I would never have done before because what if I get hit by a car? What if someone thinks I look weird? What if? But that's all God.
Amazing. Yeah, and about activating that artist and the dreamer, I think the first step of that is starting to dream outside of your boxed experience that your mind has created for you. The conditioning and the programming of your mind have you live inside of a box. So it's just about dreaming. The first step of building those dreamer skills is start dreaming inside of that. And we do that the first lesson in the Self-Mastery 1 course. We start dreaming into gratitude because that might be very different to the program we've been living in. So start dreaming things outside of the box, emotions, other outcomes, other perspectives, and then you can go further. Now you can start dreaming outside of the mind itself, with connecting into sensing, with connecting to the heart, with connecting to consciousness, things outside of the mind, because we're so used to being inside of it and identifying with its experience of what's around us. So that's how you build your dreamer skills. And when you build your dreamer skills, you can also start building your artist skills, because the truth is you are already the creator of your life and what's going on. But the problem is that it's a conflict between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. So we think we want a certain thing. We think we want an open and loving and kind partner, but we end up being attracted and drawn to the ones that are dismissive or critical of us or something else that's going on. And we say, but I want this. I want this. That's what I want to create. But unconsciously, we have parts that are running a program where they are attached to having the emotional experience of being dismissed or let down or not trusted. And when you tap into that and when you start sinking through the layers of that, you realize that we are creating that reality from our unconscious mind. And now when you know how to go in and shift your unconscious mind and shift some of the beliefs in there, well, now you can start working in consciously creating the experience that you want in your life, both internally, and the external world will reflect that back to you. When we shift that pattern inside of us, patterns will also shift outside of us. So one last question here from Karen. Hi, Karen. Do you recommend doing several of the courses simultaneously or focus on one at a time? That will look different for different people, both depending on, and maybe mostly depending on, how much time and kind of energy have you got to dedicate to it. But I would say before you have the foundation of being skeptical about the stories that your mind is throwing out, it's hard to do other things. Well, it's not hard, but you will often get stuck in a loop of believing new concepts. So go take a course in gratitude, and you might start believing in the concept of gratitude rather than the experience of it, because you're living in your mind. And this is often what we do again and again, also well into this work. We create new concept. Oh, we should only be grateful. We should only be living from our heart. Like, well, that's new boxes. There are new, those are new shoulds. Those are new concepts. So that foundation of being able to be skeptical and understand how the mind works, how the mind brings meaning, how the mind tells stories again and again and again. And that's, we're looking through the lens of that mind. I think it's the most helpful approach that I've seen. And it's the most efficient approach that I've seen in clients when they have that foundation. So really taking the time there and build those hunter skills. But then from there, I would say you can take off a bit because now you might get more in touch with, what are you desiring? Is it living from the heart? Is it connecting more with pleasure? Now you can start setting that intent and go for those skills that you feel that you truly are desiring. So I think at that point, you can do many different courses at the same time, and kind of revisit depending on your motivation level, your energy level, and the time you have to put into it. But usually when we start out, we can be quite overwhelmed because it's big shifts that we're going through. So when we start out, it's usually good to like, okay, slower is better, taking our time with each of the practices, but then we can usually start accelerating a bit. Okay, I want to thank Jody and Geraldine so much. Thank you for coming on and facing some fears and being skeptical about them and sharing with all of us. It was great to have you here and great to connect with you and hear where you're at. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.